Yo, 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 what's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Thrive and Dive, thriving in life by diving into deeper conversations. And today's going to be a special episode because we have the Emma Self on the show. How are you doing today, Emma?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here as well. I know we've been trying to have you on last school year, but then the school year came to a raging finish, and we've been on summer break.
Crazy summer.
So we're actually not even technically back at the school year, but you're here early for all your Warner responsibilities, and you're like, hey, I'm free. Let's do this. So I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So this is the first episode of the 2026-2027 school year.
Oh, yeah.
So we're starting off strong. So yeah. So Emma, to those who have no idea who you are, obviously the Warner University community knows who you are. You're a legend on campus. Honestly, you're like the face of Warner University. I feel like from a student perspective. Yeah, it was a great face. But to those who are not part of the Warner University community, go ahead and share just a brief introduction of who you are.
Yeah. So, yes, my name's Emma, just like my friend Emma.
Yeah.
And I was born and raised in Bartow, so super close to the school. And I have always been introduced and interested in agriculture. So I got into Warner, and like by God's grace, it was already so cool. And then I decided to do ag as my major, so I'm super interested in that. I love people and I love teaching, so my minor is education, so I can teach agriculture. My family is here in Bartow, and I love them. And then all my friends at Warner, which I'm so excited to see. Most of them actually will be there tomorrow. I think I get to work with them or closely to them, so that's super exciting. And then I serve at the church here in Lake Wales, also at the First Baptist Church, and so I also love youth ministry and all things people and conversations. I love to read, and I'm going into my junior year, so I still have 2 more years before I decide to either get a master's or go straight into teaching.
Let's go. I love that. That's a great introduction. And I've already had the privilege of talking with you. This is our first conversation since you coming back to the school year, but you had a cool summer, kind of a spontaneous opportunity came up. Can you talk to us a little bit about that summer opportunity you just did?
Yeah, so actually crazy story. Before I came to Warner, I was considering going to the University of Florida. I was also considering an ag school in Georgia. And so I remember sitting down with the president of Florida Farm Bureau, and he kind of told me that a Christian education is invaluable. You're not going to find that anywhere. You can find, good ag education anywhere on any farm and any internship. So he was basically like, choose the best environment. And so as soon as I went to Warner for the Royal Cup scholarship competition, I just took his advice. Well, we've kept up that relationship ever since. And I ran into him over the summer. And because of this contest I did with Florida Farm Bureau the past year, I told him I just have loved working with Florida Farm Bureau. And he was like, hey, they have a job position open up there. And I was like, well, I don't graduate for another 2 years. Like, I can't do that. But I kind of felt like, what if I did it? I had the time to just pick up my stuff and like go to Gainesville, which, if you don't know, is like 2.5 hours away. And I had friends that were super hospitable and just said, please come stay with me. So I just did. I just picked up and I got to work with people who constantly poured into me. I got to be an administrative assistant for field services, which is like part of the umbrella of Florida Farm Bureau Federation. And then before that, I got to travel and do a bunch of fun stuff and work with people. So yeah, it's been a great summer. Now I'm back.
Let's go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What originally got you into agriculture? Because to me, I really didn't know it was such a big thing until we came and you started working at Warner. And I'm like, whoa, this is like everyone's major. So I'm just curious about like what originally sparked your interest.
Yeah, so a lot of people in the ag industry will tell you that they come from a farming family and it's just what they know. But for me, it's actually the opposite. So they have, and James actually just figured out this was a thing, but they have agriculture classes in a lot of middle schools and even more high schools, especially in Florida.
Yeah.
And
did you have other Emma? Did you have an agricultural class in your classes? Okay, I was sure. I was homeschooled all my life.
Like, not that I remember, unless it was like maybe an elective, but I don't remember anything. But I also lived in South Florida.
They got
That good old Polk County.
South Florida.
Yeah, I don't know if the agriculture business is like booming.
Oh,
down
it is.
there.
It is. Trust. I'll tell you about it sometime. But yeah, basically all I knew was that this class, the teacher, they had pigs at what they call the land lab, which is just the farm part of the ag class. It's the outside part. And she had pigs, and they would have piglets each year, and you could show a pig. And so I was like, I want to be in that class and hang out with the animals all day. And so I just took the class, but it was so much more than just that. We did speaking contests. We did things like tool ID or livestock about like different contests that develop your interpersonal skills, your job skills. And I just realized, wow, you can become so passionate about something, you can get really good at it, and then you can advocate for something that has so much meaning. And also the message of agriculture can be misconstrued in so many ways I didn't know. And so as I went throughout these courses, I was like, oh my goodness, I want to be able to advocate for that, because I know the side of people that really want nothing to do with agriculture. And so ever since that year in 6th grade, I stayed involved in the organization called FFA, which is Future Farmers of America. And it's the youth organization that fosters those contests and things. And so I just did that. I even took a gap year to do that at the state level. And I've just been in love with it ever since.
Wow. What's a common misconception? You said sometimes agriculture can be misconstrued. What's some of the things that you've identified that can be often misconstrued?
Oh, definitely treatment of animals. So a lot of the processing of animals is actually like the most humane way we could do it up to date, because our technology is getting so much better. However, a lot of people think because we're having to produce food at such a large scale that it is the quality of the treatment of animals is poor, but it's actually the best it ever has been. And so a lot of people see images online, social media is a reason why that happens. So that's also why it happens now more than ever. However, we have such professionals and such good technology that the way, especially America, produces food is super effective and humane. Like, we need to feed nearly 9 billion people, and we're trying to do it in the best way we can. And people, I don't think, understand the care that goes into the production of food and fiber.
Yeah, that's good. It actually reminds me of the movie we just watched. Emma, have you seen the movie Sheep Detective or whatever?
Oh, no, but I was wanting to watch it. I showed Lambs in FFA, and so it made me want to watch it. Was it good?
Cute.
Yeah, it was cute. I mean, I'm not a full disclosure. I'm not a movie guy that involves animals. I'm not a big animal guy,
Oh, really?
which is probably not something good to say to you as an agriculture person. But like any movie that stars like an animal, like a dog or something, I'm just like,
Oh,
come
not
on.
A Dog's Purpose?
No, I never watched that one.
Oh,
No,
it was so
no.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but the one of the messages within the movie was like, you have to watch the movie. I can't summarize it, but I was talking about like, these other shepherds are just taking care of us to kill us, and how like awful it is, and things like that. And
Wow. That makes me want to watch it.
yeah. So remember,
Yeah.
the good shepherd died. The plot of the movie. I'm not going to try to give away any spoilers, but then there's another shepherd that wants his sheep for the purpose of butchering it so they can kill him.
Yeah.
And the sheep's like, no. And it kind of sends the message like, man, those butchers are terrible people. They're just trying to, kill all the animals. But in reality, though, we need to kill animals for our survival and thriving.
Exactly.
So, and just because we kill them doesn't mean it's like a grueling, inhumane process, like you just said.
No,
So,
I've been in the facilities where they've done it. Obviously, maybe anything can be made bad, but I've been in facilities where they do it so well, and I've gotten to see that, and that's been something cool that not everyone gets to see. So I feel like where my passion comes from is like, I want to be able to say, I didn't come from a farming family, but now that I've learned the other side, I want to share it with you and show you that it's not bad, so that they can support instead of placing blame on the farmers, because really farmers are who are keeping us alive.
Yeah, amen to farmers. I love my steak. I love my
Yeah.
chicken, my cheeseburgers,
Yeah.
hamburguesas. So yeah, so I'm
Even
thankful
all
for
our
you guys.
vegetables and fruit.
Yeah.
What?
All our vegetables and fruit.
What
too.
about them?
Farm?
Oh, come from farms.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Not
good
just
job.
animals.
The whole thing. Sorry, I just went straight to meat when I think farm, raising animals.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
always think like when I think of agriculture, I think of like corn and wheat and all that stuff. But
That's
my
very
dad,
Midwest.
yeah, my dad was like a commodities trader, so he worked mostly
Lord.
with farmers.
Okay, in
the
Florida?
Midwest. No, in the Midwest.
Okay.
But
yeah.
I mean, here in Florida, but he would visit them.
Okay, yeah, because Florida has over 300 commodities, which is super diverse. So, like, even South Florida, they foster a lot of those commodities. Whereas, like, the Midwest, it's going to be less, but it's going to be more of an abundance of that thing. Makes sense.
I listened to something recently. It was a podcast, your favorite one. But they were, I won't mention the name of the podcast for my wife's sake, but it was commenting on an article by Blaze Media. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Blaze Media. It's like a Christian outlook on politics or whatever, but it was about farmers and how there's a significant decline of farmers and actually a high suicide rate amongst farmers.
Yep.
So can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah. So there actually is an organization here in Florida. It's called Mind Your Melon. Ross Chastain, the NASCAR
Sorry, Mind Your
driver.
Melon got me. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Mind Your Melon.
They're a mental health organization, and the NASCAR driver Ross, he is like sponsored by them, and he supports them because they're trying to spread that message in supporting farmers. It is an extremely, and I can't even speak on this fully. I can try to understand, but not having grown up in a farming family, I can't even imagine what all the farmers go through. But I mean, no matter the weather, there was this joke one time, this saying that I heard, it was from a speech that I watched in FFA, and they said the cows don't know it's Christmas. So like, even though it's Christmas morning, all of our family needs to get up and go feed the cows first. And that's like, we get the privilege of waking up on Christmas morning and we don't worry about any of that. But the farmers, it doesn't matter the weather, the day, the holiday. If you got scheduled for a vacation, like your irrigation needs to be running, you need to go feed and water the cows or whatever it is. And so that can be really draining and very isolating, especially because construction, especially in Florida, as we have like outgrown ourselves, it is getting harder and harder to keep the family farms running. And so they're more likely to get sold. And that also is just a battle that is always going on forever. And so anyways, Mind Your Melon has supported farmers through their processes of farming so that we can avoid as much as possible the heartache that is suicide, and being there for them. The Mind Your Melon, one of the partners, the wife, she spoke at the recent Farm Bureau Young Farmers and Ranchers and Women's Conference. They combined and they called it Fusion, and she did the devotion, and she talked all about abiding. And it's just cool to see the Christian roots in that organization, because it really all boils down to, we just want to love others well, especially the farmers that are providing for us. And so that's another part of advocating, is telling others how hard farmers' jobs are so we can be more supportive of them even through a Christian.
Yeah, I have no aspirations of being a farmer, obviously, since I'm working at Warner University. But, you know, what advice, I guess, I don't know what our audience looks like, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that are watching this episode because you're in it and in the farm community. Like, what would you, I know you're still in college. You're not in the throes of a full-time farmer type job, and you want to do more of the education route, not necessarily the boots on the ground farming life. But what do you think makes, you might have already addressed this a little bit, what makes farming so taxing mentally? Because again, that article's talking about, like veterans, probably the highest self-deletion rate, and then farmers, I think, were the next one. What can someone do to start preparing for that, or knowing if they're built for that?
Yeah, so I would say you have to do farming because you love it. You don't do farming for the money, is what a lot of people will say. And you just have to do it because you're passionate about it. I've seen so many older folks who have grown up in farming, and you don't keep your land. You don't advocate for your farm because it's going to make you a lot of money. And I think the finances, unfortunately, is a huge part of that. If you could sell your land for $500 million and leave all that money for your kids and your grandkids, that would be what you choose. But farmers don't, because we all have to eat. And so I think that's beautiful on their behalf, but it can be so taxing because you'll suffer huge losses. You'll have, hundreds of acres, and one bad storm can ruin them all. Of course, there's insurance and there's supports, and you have your village. But a natural disaster, a pest, for example, there's something called citrus greening. There's been a huge decline in citrus production ever since the early 2000s because of this one little bug, but it will destroy the whole tree. And I don't know if you know, but citrus trees don't just pop up and produce fruit all of a sudden. The tree actually has to grow first, and then you keep that tree like year and year again. And so then it produces fruit for several years. So when you lose that tree, you're not just losing that year's fruit, you're losing fruit that you could have had for years. And so just something as simple as that can destroy you, maybe leave you to be the only one farming. None of your kids want to farm. What do you do? And so just the day in and day out of navigating those struggles, and then maybe being the only one in your area that is farming. That's why I love Farm Bureau, is because our mission is to be the voice of agriculture. And so that's why I love it so much, because they have to do the communicating on the back end because the farmers don't have time to do it. And so, yeah, my advice would be find other farmers that have done it. Like if you're a first generation farmer, find other people who have done it before you and just let them pour into you and give you all the wisdom that they can, no matter the commodity. Like let other people give you knowledge. I heard one time from a farmer and a politician, never be the smartest person in the room, which I really love. So just let other people be smarter than you and give you that knowledge. And then also let them be your village.
That's awesome, Emma. Great takeaways for sure. Switching gears, let's talk more about your story, if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
Talk about living in the Self family, and then eventually culminate it to how you met Jesus and all that good nitty gritty details.
Awesome. Okay. So I grew up, like I said, in Bartow. I have 2 younger siblings, and then my mom and my dad. And we all grew up. My dad worked in the church, and it was actually the church that I ended up being raised in. However, when I start my story like that, people are actually really surprised about what happens next. So when I was in 2nd grade, around then, my parents, we got up and moved to a few places. So we moved around in Florida, and then we actually moved to Nebraska, which was super random for my dad's job. And we came back after a few short months, and my parents told me they were getting a divorce. And so that was already really hard, obviously. And so we go through all of those motions of the divorce, them getting remarried. For me, it was a bit of an awkward age. My siblings were young enough where they couldn't fully understand. But for me, I was at that 2nd grade. Like that's like 8 years old, where you know enough to ask hard questions and then be super anxious. It just made me super anxious. And then they got remarried, and I had a really fun time with my stepdad at the time and my stepmom at the time. My dad was living North Florida, and we were living central south-ish Florida. And so he would drive the 4 hours down, pick us up, drive the 4 hours back. And then at the end of, so if that was a Friday, on Sunday, he would take us back and take us back up, and drive back up. So lots of driving and lots of back and forth, but that's how we saw him. And then whenever I was in 8th grade, so I'm 21 now, just for context. And so whenever I was in 8th grade, we got like a call from my stepmom that he was under investigation for a crime, which was, my dad worked at the church and like the children's home before that. Like and I still think he's a great guy, and I'll say more about that later. But yeah, he was great. So just to imagine him doing something, I was like, there's no way. And so from October of my 8th grade year until May of my 8th grade year, he was under investigation. Ended up divorcing my stepmom because of that. I don't know who did what, but they got divorced. And so that I had built a family, and then that kind of got taken away from me, which is super hard. And then 2 days before my birthday, my dad said, I'll be home after this court date, and maybe I can see you for your birthday. And I never heard back from him because he was arrested for 10 years for committing a white collar crime. Is that what it's called? Yeah. And so I was like, 10 years, like that was just obviously, I'm the oldest of the like three of us. So that was devastating too, to just carry that. We would go visit my grandparents, like, I become the mom all of a sudden, and that's just eventually super taxing. And so then my mom ended up divorcing my stepdad shortly after that. And so maybe like a year-ish after that. And so I'm starting out high school, like I having a hard time knowing what love looks like. And from that, not really understanding God's love so much. I knew how to be a good Christian, but I don't think I was doing it because you first start with love. You follow the Lord, you obey the Lord because you love him and you know that he loved you first. And I don't think I really understood that at the time. And so I just let my identity get wrapped up in the distractions of the world. I didn't really have a stronghold of a family. And my mom is, the best thing that's ever happened to me. I love her so much. She's my best friend. But like my poor mom was a single mom worrying about this. I didn't want to be the kid that she worried about. So I would go do my own thing. And I just let my identity be wrapped up in, I would say, mostly my friends. A big part of my testimony actually isn't even about family struggles. It's about friendship struggles. I didn't know who I was. And so if my friends liked certain music, I liked that music. My friends, and luckily they introduced me into ag, like they did ag. And FFA. So I did that after them. And that was nice. But it got to the point where whenever I got into high school, your non-believer friends start exploring new things and they're not always good things. And I kind of followed along with that and just went along with them. And I realized I don't really know if I love this. And so I had a youth pastor who is now one of my biggest mentors. And he would always invite me to youth group. And I had gone in 6th grade and kind of felt left out. I was the youngest. And so I never went back. And finally in 10th grade, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And so I went, and I remember it was actually the guys and girls separated that day. And the woman who was leading the girls group talked about friendships. And I raised my hand and I said, what do you do if your friends in your environment really isn't following the Lord? I was saved. I got saved at camp in, I think it was 6th grade, but I wasn't radically following after the Lord, which, who really is? Like, we can always do better at that. But I just wasn't abiding. I wasn't living out my life for Christ. And so, but, the Lord pricks at your heart at just the right time. And so I asked her, and she gave an answer of like, maybe don't be with those friends. And then she told me that she wanted me to get coffee with her daughter. And so to watch her daughter invite me to coffee, I've been thinking about the word hospitality a lot lately. To watch someone invite me to spend time with them, and for us to not talk about gossip, to talk about the Lord, to be positive to one another, it opened my eyes. Her name is Annabelle. And so when she did that, I started coming back to youth group. Even if when I felt left out, it had just changed my life, I think, that day. And so ever since then, I've been following after the Lord. It was interesting to see as I came into college, I was always like the Christian kid in high school. So then like freshman year, you don't really know what you're doing. So to watch myself kind of mess up and then also like follow that lead of like, okay, shame, or is this just conviction and I can keep walking in resilience, was something interesting to navigate. But my community at Warner has just been so great. And so that's why I truly like the biggest thing I'll preach is you are who you spend your time with. And so in my gap year, I got a chance to give a speech to like 5,000 people. And that's what I chose to make it about was, let's say you're in a garden, ag, so you're in a garden and like I was talking about citrus greening, like you can either be affected by pests and weeds, or you can plant yourself around things that provide more nutrients and lift you up. And so by God's grace, God is who brought these people into my life, have chose to be planted in that. And so that's why I'm here today.
Wow. Thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, I know another guy who used a lot of agricultural illustrations when he taught. It was Jesus.
Yeah. Parable here and there. Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So to recap, you got a question?
Oh, no.
To recap, all right, so if I'm make sure I understand this correctly. So made a decision to follow Christ in 6th grade at a camp. I want to come back to that in a second. But with all the family dynamics, understanding the love of God wasn't something that was necessarily on the forefront of your mind.
Right.
And that's an important piece. And then meeting with Annabelle in high school is when you understood like authentic Christian community and the love of God. And then obviously going to Warner, it helped ground your faith.
Yeah.
When it comes to experiencing the love of God in order to, which yields to obedience, right? We want to be obedient to God, not because we're necessarily obligated, but because we love him as our Lord and Savior. What made that shift specifically to where he was just a concept to a relational father?
Yeah, great question. I would say my senior year, when I think really what it is my old youth pastor, Patrick, after he kept inviting me to youth group and I came, he didn't stop there. And I actually think that's something that some churches get wrong is they stop when they get the number. But I think that discipleship and consistency is so important in ministry. So he kept coming back and he would ask me to serve. And for someone to see me and say, I want you to serve in whatever capacity. I mean, I helped lead our little worship group we had, and I eventually became a youth intern for him. So to watch him give me that experience, and when you serve, it's not about yourself anymore. And so you realize, wow, the only way I can love these people well is if I know what the Lord's love is like first. And so I think being a part of those opportunities and watching someone choose to disciple me then made me decide that I was worth discipling. And so that's when, when you watch people older than you build habits and build their relationship with the Lord, it sharpens you and it challenges you. No one ever talked simply or down to us at my church. They always challenged us. And we were able to ask big questions. And so whenever I was put in the position where I could do that, it truly kept me going, and then being around that community. So again, I guess it goes back to community. And then obedience, especially about getting in the word and little habits. One of my very best friends, her name is Kaylee. We met during my gap year. Her and her now husband, before they got married, we were all three in a group chat before we started college. And every single day we would text each other what we learned from reading our Bible. And so obviously it's only 3 people. So when someone doesn't send a text, and you check on them. And it's not in a condemning way, it's in a loving way. And so first, also accountability for people to hold me accountable. So now that they're married, we don't text in the group chat anymore, but which I think was so excited for them. They get to now be married and get to do that together. But for me, that leaves me, okay, people can't spoon feed me. Am I going to still do this? And so I had learned so much about the Lord's love that I decided to do it on my own. And so I've been, doing that. And I've not done it perfectly. So I've had to learn a lot about grace ever since, I think, especially being in.
That's good. And then going back to that 6th grade decision to follow Christ, you said at camp, what kind of provoked you to make that decision to follow Jesus then?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I grew up in a Christian household, so none of those subjects were foreign to me. I guess I forgot to say the church that I went to youth group at was the same church my dad worked at. So this has been the same church. Sorry, I forgot to say that. So I went to a camp. It was called Camp Gilead. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Like Song of Solomon's Gilead?
Yeah.
Your hair is like a flock of goats sending off enough Gilead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry. Yeah. Cool.
And so I went there, and again, with the hospitality, the camp counselors were just so intentional with their time, asking me questions. And I mean, the pastor did your classic, call to salvation. And I just felt convicted in that moment. I don't think I knew it was conviction, but I did feel convicted in that moment. And I know I want to live for God and for nothing else. And so to hear someone ask me and follow up about that decision, I think truly is what led me to salvation.
That's awesome, Emma. Other Emma, I think I cut you off one time. Do you have questions for Emma?
Yeah, you said you had wanted to circle back about your dad's story. Was there anything you wanted to
yeah. So yes. So Yeah, that was whenever I was 14, and now I'm 21, so it's been a really long time. But I did just want to say that it is definitely like a Paul moment. So we talk about Paul writing so much of the New Testament, and no, my dad's not a murderer. However, like Paul was a murderer before, so to see that radical change and also to watch him be in prison. So in the book of Philippians, when he writes it, it's known as like the most joyful book of the Bible, is what people nowadays will say. And he wrote it in prison. And so to watch how your poor circumstance God can turn that into something good and for the good of others and for the kingdom is just incredible. And so, yeah, that's just been a testament. Like, I would never want to speak down on my dad because I think that it has done so much good for him and also others who know him now. He's gotten to teach within the prison. He's ministered to others. And by the grace of God, a couple weeks ago, he moved into the halfway house, which is like the next step. The next step is real life. And so that, I mean, it's been, I can't do math, 7 years since I haven't been able to call him when I needed my dad or text when I needed my dad. And so finally he got a phone in there and I finally can. So it's just cool to watch. And he wasn't supposed to until at least this September. And so to watch that happen has been really cool and like a testament of God's grace, but also like God's like punishment. Like you will watch how, you know, you do something and sometimes it's so severe, you get put in a hard situation. How do I also see his love and his limits? I think is a big thing I learned.
Wow. Thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, that's the real deal. So I have a total different question that's unrelated to everything. You got any more questions for her story specifically? All right. So we're gearing up for a new, year at Warner University, as we've already stated. We're jumping into the 2026, 2027 school year. And as the coordinator of spiritual life, I'm trying to discern, what the Lord's going to do in this body, this group of students. And you have a good pulse, I think, of, what the Lord has done at Warner in the past 2 years. And you're very involved and you talk with people a lot. So you have a good pulse. We were listening to a preacher. We were traveling this past weekend, so we weren't able to go to our home church. So our go-to preacher whenever we're away is Pastor J.D. Greer from the Summit Church in North Carolina. Yeah. And he was preaching about how he's concerned with how young adult ministry is discipling, I guess, young adults these days. And I'm not going to do it justice. The message, you'd have to go back and watch the last Sunday's message, but he's talking about how a lot of the content of, young adult groups and stuff is therapeutic Christianity as opposed to just, full surrender and obedience. Yeah. It's like, oh, what can, Jesus do for me to make me feel better versus full out surrender. Yeah. And I want to just hear, is that, I don't want to, you don't have to say that's characteristic of a Warner per se, but just what are your thoughts on that? Is because young adult culture gravitate more to a therapeutic Christianity versus an actual authentic following? And any comments on that regard?
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a great point that he makes. And also so this week that I've been home from Gainesville, I've tried to get coffee with everyone that I haven't been able to see over the summer, or even the school year. And so that's actually come up in a couple conversations, not said like that, but I really do like that because you go to a Christian school, not only do you expect there to be Christians there, but you also expect there to be Christians who come with a similar understanding / foundation as you whenever you get to that school. So I have experienced so many different denominations, understandings, backgrounds, beliefs within Christianity. And a lot of that I have noticed, I told a couple of friends, sometimes is what I would call like the feel-good preaching or the trendy. What podcast was I listening to? Oh, I listened to... Well, I guess I won't say the name so I don't plug another podcast.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I didn't want to plug the other podcast because I was not a big fan of it. What's the podcast you listen
to? This one, it's also, the wife is the host, but like the co-host is the husband. It's called Happy and Healthy. It's Janine Amapola and the husband is Caleb Ward. Anyways, I listen to them all the time and they did a why Christian sayings aren't actually biblical. And all of those Christian sayings, I think it happens when someone comes to Christ, especially when their family isn't a believer, aren't believers. And so then a lot of what they're learning is off of social media, and social media will take clips that feel good, and then it will look attractive, sound attractive. You'll love that, and that's where you're getting most of your preconceived notions is from that feel good therapeutic preaching. And so I have seen a lot of radical surrender at school, but because Christianity is normal at Warner, it's so easy to get in a rhythm of being basically lukewarm. If you hear like David Platt talk about being radical, it just is this crazy idea. For example, like he sold most of his possessions in his house, and that was like being radical. But really in the Bible, we read about how like people would leave all their belongings and go and follow Jesus because he asked them to. But to us, that's a crazy idea. And so I think a rhythm of chapel, normal Christianity at school, when you get into that rhythm, you need accountability to sharpen you constantly. And so sometimes I think we can all just get in the jive and it be a little therapeutic, feel whatever feels good, whatever's trendy, because our school is a Christian school. So whatever's trending at the Christian school is what we're going to follow. But are we like abiding in the word every single day? Are we sacrificing sleep? Are we sacrificing energy either for God or for others?
Yeah. That's a great comment.
I hope that answered your question.
No, it did. I'm just trying to just process it in real time. So I figured I'd ask you since you're on the pod, because I believe in therapy. I mean, I'm pursuing my degree in counseling. I do believe Jesus will make your life better. You know, following the commands of God is actually in your best interest, even if you feel like it's, taking away your freedoms. You know, sin is fun to the non-believer. Jesus asked me to do what? You know, overall, you're going to be more mentally healthy. It's going to be therapeutic in the sense that you're going to be better off. But that's a byproduct of following Christ, not necessarily the goal. My goal of surrendering to Christ isn't necessarily to feel better. My goal of surrendering to Christ is because I love him. He died for me. He created me, and he's the boss, right? Yeah. So it's kind of coming to a different starting place, I guess. And unfortunately, a lot of times, especially in cultural Christianity here in America, sometimes Jesus just becomes an attachment to make my life better. But if Jesus were ever asked me to do something that's contrary to what I want to do for my life, at Jesus, this is where you stop and where I continue, right? If he's calling me to do something harder than I want to do, if he's telling me to stop doing this sinful behavior, I'm like, I like you, Jesus, but not when you're trying to control my life. And like you said, using David Platt as an example, right? He gets to the root of it, and obviously every preacher has a different style, whatever. That's between them and God. But it is interesting to see, sold out believers. We have a good friend, married couple. They're missionaries in the Middle East. I won't say specifically to keep them safe. And they're sold out. They're abandoned, right? Right, yeah. And then, I even think of myself, like, man, I'm just comfortable here in Florida, It's like, am I as sold out as I should be, Right, yeah. So we never want to compare, but at the end of the day, it's not about a therapeutic Jesus. It's about commander and Lord of your life. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, Jesus says to deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. I think this quote is maybe it's by R.C. Sproul, but now I'm scared that it's not. It's someone with like the initials as their name.
Yeah. Most smart people have their double initials. C.S. Lewis, R.C. Sproul.
What's wrong with that? Like E.E. Self, I guess. I don't know. But they say, "'Tis when life will soon be past, only what's done for Christ will last." And that makes you realize nothing you do for yourself will last past this little. Have you guys seen the clip of Francis Chan with the rope?
Oh yeah, the eternity.
Yeah. And that is such a short, and the Bible talks about it. It's like, but a mere shadow. Like our life is like this much. It's the very end of a rope. And so what we should constantly be doing is denying ourselves, taking up our cross, following Jesus to go and make disciples. And that's what will last that whole rest of the huge long rope. And so I think people want to be comfortable, and comfortable is really, really dangerous. Comfortable's it's not good, and that's where sin is bred. And the other Bible verse that makes me think of is that like sin separates us from God. And why would you want to be separated from your creator? And so I don't know about you guys, but I've experienced like seasons where you'll fall into sin, or even just a day, like anything. I mean, we sin every day, and you'll notice how you'll leave a conversation full of fruit, feeling fruitful and feeling given life. You'll leave a conversation full of sin, feeling like dead, right? And so there's a huge difference. As much as you try to deny that difference, there is a huge difference. But what's even costlier is the difference after we pass away.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, well said. Yeah, that Francis Chan clip is powerful.
Yeah.
Living through eternal perspective, right? This life is so temporary, and some people treat this life like it's the main thing. That's just the pre-course to the main thing, which is eternity with God. So,
a lot of what you were saying earlier about like kind of combating like some of that feel good stuff and actually like denying your flesh was accountability partners and having mentors. It sounds like you have like a great amount of mentors in your life. What would your advice be to those who are like needing a mentor? How do you find those good mentors or find an accountability partner?
Well, I think first and foremost, don't underestimate the power of prayer. I am just amazed. Me and my friend were joking actually today. Oh, God did it again. God was faithful. Like, who's surprised? But you really, for a second, are stuck in this, like, God will never provide a good mentor. Why do these people have good mentors? But whenever you pray without ceasing, like, the Bible talks about wise counsel. If we're called to have wise counsel, we're made to be in community. God will provide that for you. And James talks about you do not have because you do not ask, and also don't ask wrongly. So if you're asking, and he says he gives wisdom to all without reproach to those who ask. So if you ask for wisdom, wisdom comes from the Bible, but it also comes from wise counsel and those mentors. So if you ask for wisdom and you ask for those who could pour into you, he's going to provide it. So that's the first thing, is pray. And then the next thing also is be open to the opportunities. If I had never said yes to Patrick, that youth pastor, if I had never said yes, like Delaney offered me the job with CAB, if I had never said yes to that, if I had never said yes to the ag program at Warner, I wouldn't have these mentors. So discern where you can say yes after you pray for that, and then like follow through with that. And I believe he'll provide.
That's great. Good question. Good response. Yeah, to all those listening that want to grow in the relationship with Christ. You're not supposed to do it by yourself. You're not, no man's an island. Find your accountability partners, find your community. We find that primarily in a local church. So if you're not connected to a local church, find a church in your area. If you're at Warner University though we're not a church, we're still provide a community that you can find accountability partners, mentors, different things of that nature. Biggest thing for you is to get off your butt and get plugged in somewhere. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes we're like, oh, I don't have any community. I don't have any accountability partners, but what are you doing about it?
Right.
So, that's good. Emma, as we close, any final things you want to address on this episode? I'm sure we'll have you back on the pod. You're a natural. You communicate well. But anything you want to say before we close out this episode specifically?
I don't know. I would just say, I guess especially to college students, me and my friends have been talking about this recently because we're all in our 20s, and I'll meet up with girls who are married, and then I'll meet up with girls who are super single. And so we're like, and I'll meet up with girls who are not in college anymore and some who are, but we're all the same age. And so I would just say to college students, we're all, still the same age, but for the first time, I think, in our lives, we're experiencing all being super spread out and at super random places. So I guess the only thing I would leave us with is that the Lord has a specific plan for each of us, not for our good, but for his good. And so when you finally surrender to his will, Jesus says it himself, not my will, but yours be done. When you surrender, you take up your cross, you deny your flesh. Fullness of joy doesn't come from the feel good and the therapeutic. Fullness of joy comes because it's a fruit of the Spirit and it's eternal. So when you surrender to God and give up your fleshly desires, you can begin to trust him in his plan for your life. So just choose him in your plan, because he's the only thing that will last. Anything else is temporary.
Amen. That'll preach. Yeah. Great. Can we give it up for Emma? Yeah. Emma. There you go. Well, seriously, Emma, thanks for being on. Would love to have you on again sometime in the future. But yeah, me. Of course. Yeah. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Emma Self. If you enjoyed it, You're listening on YouTube, be sure to hit that like button. And if you enjoy the content we have here and you're listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. If you're listening over at Spotify and you have yet to do so, give us a follow. And if you really enjoy the show, give us a 5-star rating. That helps us out tremendously. But until then, this is Thrive and Dive, thriving in life by diving into deeper conversations. We'll see you at the next episode.